Hey everybody, happy new week. Hope you're doing amazing. I've got my gorgeous author Victoria Kitanov there holding a book, Claim Your Space, Beginner's Guide to, stop shaking the book, Guide to Create Your Own Artist Sanctuary. Sorry, I can't remember every single person's tagline, and I'll show you guys actually on a bigger screen her amazing book. I'll just pull it up here. Here it is, just a closer picture of what it looks like. And now I'm going to give you guys the official introduction because we're talking.
Oh, sorry, that was my computer.
Oh, was that your computer? Siri thinks I'm talking to her on your computer. All good. So let's get into a little bit of the official introduction of who Victoria is, and then we're going to talk about the topic today, claiming your space, why a room of one's own is essential for creative flow, mental health and well-being, which I'm very, very interested in finding out a little bit more about. We always, I work at home. I was talking to Stuart the other day. We are pretty much Monday through to Friday in a self-imposed lockdown because we do work online and we have our meals at home and all that sort of stuff. I go for my training session, but really we are in the home now that we're not a touring business or face-to-face a lot more. And I do like to anchor different things to different spaces in the home so that you can have that kind of break from one place. So here's Victoria's official introduction. So Victoria Kitanov is an award-winning artist and author of Claim Your Space, a beginner's guide to create your own artist studio. Victoria's creative career commenced in commercial art, graphic design, and in publishing as a children's book illustrator in the early 1980s. I actually have seen many of that. You've shared on social media of all of your amazing illustrations you've done. So between 1990 to 97, Victoria was nominated by Angus Robertson Publishers as an official re-illustrator of May Gibbs' classic Gumnut Babies. By the late 1990s, Victoria left illustration to continue tertiary studies in history at the University of Sydney, a career in the library and information sector, and later the Australian Public Service in Canberra. Working for the for the Royal Australian Navy, between 2007-2019 inspired an enduring fascination with Australian maritime heritage and an exhibition of her first marine paintings at the Australian Wooden Boat Festival in Hobart, Tasmania in 2017. So Victoria understands firsthand how important a creative space is to be creative, and finally has a studio of her own. Yay! Yay! That's the official introduction. And we met probably a couple of years ago, if not a little bit longer. Is that right?
Yes, that'd be, yes. Yeah.
And actually, the first time we met, Victoria wasn't quite ready to write her book. And then there was a phone call that we made probably just over 12 months ago, and touched base with her and said, well, do you still want to write your book? And she said, actually, you've called me at the perfect timing. Yeah, it was, so what changed? So how long had you been thinking about writing a book? And what changed the moment that we kind of did that long-term follow-up with you that you said, nah, now I'm going to do it?
It's strange because, good morning, Nat. You can tell that Nat is somewhere warm and I'm somewhere cold. But anyway, it's strange because I think, I've sort of long felt that inside me was a writer. And it was probably back in the 90s when I first wrote a thesis, which was related to my late father. And ever since then, I've kind of felt like, because it was very interesting, the whole process of writing a book and how it changes you on so many levels. And so for all those years since, I've kind of felt like, now is the time, but it was never the right time, never, something always took its place. And so when Nat got back in touch with me and, sort of mentioned about, would you like to still write your book? I said yes before I'd even realised what I was going to write about. So, I wasn't sure. And originally I thought maybe I could take that old thesis and redredge it. And in the end, it was something completely different. And it was one of the categories of the books that you can choose to write about. Mine ended up being related to my business. sort of in a roundabout way, but a connected way. And I thought, no, there's nothing I really don't know about studios, and especially from a personal level. So, you know, it was a very interesting exercise to write about, you know, sort of how it's more than just a room. It's so much connected to your life and your well-being and your focus and your inspiration, etc.
So let's talk about that a bit more, and we'll go back to the book writing journey a bit later. Because I'm curious, I'm like dying to know some tips. I always love when people give me practical stuff I can go and do. So you recommend for wellness, mental well-being and all that kind of stuff that pretty much every single person should create their own in-house studio. Is that right?
Yes, or at least a space that you can, you know, very often it's not easy for some people. And I thought about that when I was writing. I've had the luxury you know, while I have a partner, you know, we don't live together and I don't have children. I don't have those kind of, you know, I have interruptions, but not that. So I have, to some degree, a luxury of being able to pick and choose a little bit. That doesn't mean my path is any easier, but I thought about some people that might have to share a space, some people who live with other people who might be, you know, sort of like crush their dreams a little bit. Maybe not intentionally, but, you know, sort of it's like, some people feel obliged to, you know, if they've only got the dining room table to work on or the kitchen table, then they have to clear it for meals and put away. And then sometimes having to pull everything out again, you lose momentum. And so it's really important. For me, it's a funny thing. It was a few years ago. My younger brother was going through a separation, came to live with me. We'd always, throughout our lives, got on very well, but it was a very fraught time for both of us in lots of ways. And we ended up having some, you know, some awful arguments and so forth. So at the time, I was doing a lot of the marine art and so forth, and I just used a room in the house. And I found that when my nerves would get so jangled, or I would get angry or whatever, and it's very hard to diffuse that because your mind is always, you know, going overtime. And, you know, that if I could slide over into my room and just paint, it was amazing how quickly, it was almost instantaneously, you just focus on what you're doing. And you get back into that, what they call these days, the vortex or the zone or whatever. Because when you can get into that space, and whatever can bring you into that space is very often a creative activity, whether that's singing or writing or whatever. It's sort of like, that's where your ideas, your calm, your, you know, everything comes from. It might, when you step out of that, you might, you know, sort of it's easy to get rattled again. But when you step out, I think once you've been in, you leave calmer. And that's the most important thing, because, you know, sort of like, and it just makes you more keen to get back into that zone again. And sometimes the best way to do that is just shut the world out, just to be calm. And we know the value of that these days, very much so.
How do we go about claiming our space? Say in a household that there's not a spare room. You know, we're actually building an extra room so we can separate our girls, because this office space has taken up that extra room for the child that needs, you know, to be on now. They all need to have their own rooms. So, and I really don't think an office is the place where, I mean, yes, I get creative, but it's really where I do focused work and all that. So, you know, what would you say to someone who doesn't have like an extra room in the house?
I think first of all is to acknowledge the fact that your creative time, and I don't necessarily mean painting or anything, it's just your creative time might also be your meditation time, or your just the way that you relax. Even it's the same as even if the only space you had was your bedroom, that it's not full of jangly things, you know,
yeah,
things, you know, big TV sets or things like that. You know, where it's kind of like just a quiet space, and that sort of thing. And it's very important for a lot of people, I think too, and even for myself, the school system, particularly once upon a time, and even today, still values more, when I say left brain activities, you know, sort of in terms of, say, science, maths, and all of that kind of thing, as though, and sort of sidelines the creative things, you know, like, and yet we know that these days that having creative time is very important. Having rest time is very important. And also too, our brains operate, that your creative side articulates what your, you know, left brain is, maybe the logical side of you, but it's, you know, it's everything. It's our ability to speak out. So I think it's our heart center, you know, it's very important. And so even as I was, even when I was first illustrating, I think even my parents, it probably wasn't until my second book was published that even though they worried about me, you know, because it's like, oh, there's no money in art and all that kind of stuff, which is not true at all. But it wasn't about that. I couldn't have stopped myself from doing it even if I wanted to. But it's, you know, I think sort of like there was always a level of fear coming from them, even if they were proud of what I was achieving. And, you know, sort of like, I may not have made my first million yet, but I've never been, you know, out of work in terms of art, and it just makes me feel good doing it. So, but it's very important to claim a space for yourself. And you know, yourself is just as important as anybody else's need. And it's always the same, that old saying about on the plane, put your oxygen mask on first.
I love that one. Well, I'm glad you've confirmed a couple of things, because I think my bedroom is kind of where I do, and when I wake up in the morning, because we wake up at different times with Stuart, I'm usually up first. I do like meditation, visualization, I do journaling, and I listen to, you know, some of the things, like I do 3 or 4 different things before I even like get up to exercise and all that sort of stuff. And that's how I kind of set up the day. So it can be, even if you put like a nice little I think chair, like what I did at my Gold Coast house. By the way, I'm not on the Gold Coast, I'm not somewhere warm, I'm somewhere super cold, but the reason I'm dressed like this is because every time I do my exercise I stay really hot for a couple of hours. And so that's, otherwise it's bloody freezing outside. But at my Gold Coast house, in the corner of the master bedroom, I bought one of those little recliner chairs that you can put your feet up, and that's kind of like a spot you could sit and read and things like that. So is there any kind of suggestions of how someone should set up their little space?
It's entirely personal, and it depends on what you're setting it up for. Obviously, this one is aimed at people, you know, sort of that maybe are creative. We're all creative. Sorry.
We're all creative.
We are all creative. We just, you know, might do it in several different ways and things like that. So it's a space that needs to be calm. The light, depending, you know, like sort of, you know, lighting is really essential. Creating a mood is really essential. If it's your studio, for example, the things that inspire you around you, you know, it might be your shell collection, or your, you know, some words, you know, sort of you know, or some of your beloved books around you, things that make you feel good, make you feel inspired. You might, you know, lots of us have a lot of books that we don't always have the time to get to, but we, you know, having them around. Like even this weekend, I was just running a workshop over 2 days about wonderful watercolor. And even digging out some of my reference books on watercolor before the class was really super inspiring, because I thought I haven't been able to somehow get to those books for quite a while. So it was really lovely, and it made me just want to sort of jump right in and do watercolor myself. And so,
I love it.
Yeah, I think creating your setting is most important.
I like it dark.
Yes.
Like when I wake up like at 6 and it's still all dark, I even like keep my bedroom quite dark, so like, you know, it's like that's, I think it's quiet when it's dark.
Yes, you feel you know, sort of like, it's almost like a lovely blanket around you, and that sort of thing.
No, those are some really good tips. So you mentioned you ran a couple of days workshop. What is that? We know that writing this book wasn't just about the book, that you want to help more people, you know, get value from everything that you teach. So what are these workshops and events that you've got planned now moving forward? Tell me.
Yes, around about the same time that that Nat called me, I just bought a wonderful building in the Upper Hunter in New South Wales, and Mark Twain spoke here back in the 19th century. Banjo Patterson spoke here. It's a huge hall. It's a wonderful old building from the 19th century. It's and I sort of had, since I bought it, I had such plans to turn it into an event space, to turn it into a creative retreat space, because it's got some lovely accommodation here. It's very peaceful. It's really, you know, like, and I think too, I attended a couple of years ago another artist's sort of retreat in France, and I thought the thing that inspired me, even though it was very expensive to do it and I waited till I could afford it, but when I did, it was the thought of rolling out of bed pretty much and painting. No interruptions, no, you know, just doing something that kept me in my happy place. And I thought, why can't I create something like that here? It's just as beautiful. It's not France, but it's you know, got wonderful elements here. And it's,
where is it located? Where is it located, so people know?
It's in a little place, a little country town called Scone in the Upper Hunter Valley. And so we've got everything that a lot of people, particularly in Sydney, and may know the Hunter Valley associated with its wonderful wineries. And so the Upper Hunter is just a bit north of that. Scone is renowned for, next to Kentucky in the US, for its thoroughbred racehorses, and there's a lot of big studs here, big horse studs. But there's a couple of other little regional towns that are related, you know, Merriwa, that's very connected with the art scene. And I thought, well, let's make Scone also quite arty and stuff. So yeah, it's quite exciting. And the feedback I've been getting is we certainly need it. And people that have come to this space already that I own have said, wow, you know, because it's been closed to the public for such a long time, that, you know, we certainly need something like this. It's one of the best spaces. Well, so I'm excited.
If you have more dates available, let us know. Maybe the whole team will join. And you know, is very, very arty, and she loves her painting. I'm not, but I'll give it a go. I know it's going to get me in some kind of a zone. But, it would be a very relaxing thing to do. I love that. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about the process. You know, obviously you've done illustrated books in the past, and how is this different from everything else you were doing, you know, in all those years when you started into books?
I should have done more of what you told me to do rather than, you know, sort of, I think too, you know, sort of the ultimate 48-hour author is really supportive, very, very supportive. And there's so many wonderful techniques that you use to support your new authors getting started on this journey and bringing out what's inside them, and offering some shortcuts, because that's a real draw card, you know, the concept of writing your book within 48 hours. And is that even possible?
Possible.
And who knew, so, because most of us would imagine that writing a book takes years and years and lots of research, etc. But it's, it really, it's inside of you. And so, yes, having that support to bring it out. And my only thing was that for my first book, I think I kind of felt like if I could write it, then it helps me to think it out. And I think too, because but there's other ways, and I won't go into all that until, because for anyone who's still on the journey, I'll leave that for Nat to reveal, in the program.
Oh, no, that's okay. I mean, most people know, the way we fast track it is people speak it out, we get transcribed, goes into cleanup. But look, nowadays we're seeing 50-50 really, Victoria. It's not like every single person does that, because like yourself, even myself, in the last couple of books, I actually typed them out because I kind of enjoyed the process of doing that. It doesn't, yes, it slows you down. You can't do 40,000 words in 48 hours. You can probably do 10,000 to 12,000. But say you kind of just stuck to it for like 7 to 10 days, you'll still type out a whole book if you had the structure and the unpacking done before, which is the most important part, which is where you alleviate writer's block, right? Once you've got unpacks done and you've got your structure, then it's all about just execution, right? And so in saying that, it's still, it's a very systemized and way that will fast track you, whether you're speaking or typing. And you're absolutely right. The whole thing that I have noticed over the 10 years I've been doing this is that accountability, the support, the people who are doing the same thing at the same time, that push, they kind of push themselves through to completion together. And that's why it's such a huge success rate. Because when I think about someone being on their own, writing their book, we get into our head. Our mindset is like so important on the book, especially first book, right? Like if you don't get the mindset right, you'll never finish it. You'll just go around in circles and all that sort of stuff. And I love the fact that, if you get into mental funk, you've got people, you've got mentors, you've got people to push you through, and that's why it gets finished, right?
Yes.
And so you're writing a second book, and we're going to be seeing and hanging out again at the next retreat in November, which is exciting. And you already, before we started the call, you mentioned like book 3 and all that, what it's going to be. So it's addictive, isn't it? Writing books is addictive.
It is. Absolutely.
I love that. And you're going through the process. So the second book is not so much linked up to your business. It's more about like kind of the history of families and how people kind of go back to find out more of their family histories. Is that right? It's
inspired by the thesis that I wrote back in the 90s about my late father, who was from Eastern Europe. And of course, when I started writing, we weren't really big on the internet. It was very difficult. I didn't speak the language, so finding information. So it was a little bit of a journey, but the person that you become at the end of it, and how there's so many benefits to writing. So I thought in this instance that I would frame it, my father's journey story is the theme, but framing around that, but also to assist people or to encourage people to not give up, even though there's challenges and difficulties to finding out information about how to put together a family story, or someone in your forebear that might have already passed away, like as it was in my father's case. So where do you start, and how do you extract something out of it, and what is your aim in doing so? And it's I thought it could make an interesting book, but so I thought the third book is back a little bit back toward business again. But I thought it's a shame that I spent so much time once upon a time crafting this story that has buried all these years. No one's ever seen it. And I thought, what a shame. So to do my late father some honor and to bring a bit of his story to the surface. And it's a very interesting story from, and Nat coming from an Eastern European background, it's it's a fascinating place because it's also been closed for a long, long time. So
I agree.
yeah.
That's really cool, and I can see you. Kind of that's if you were to help other people extract this from their histories as well through that process. It just kind of I guess the ripple effect is spreading, right?
Yes.
The whole thing is not to waste what we have learned, what we have experienced, and the shortcuts we have figured out along the way. And if we can just reverse engineer those steps of what helped us and just show other people, because let's say, for example, the watercolor. If I picked up watercolors, I wouldn't even know what to do. You know what I mean? I would literally, what I might do is Google some YouTube videos and try to figure it out. But let's say I came to a 2-day training with you. You're going to tell me, do this, don't do that. And you're going to save me so much time and hassle. And I actually might come out with a decent painting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because mentors are so important. And I think save yourself time. And if you are interested in something, find someone who's got the result and go for it. You know what I mean? Sometimes, as you say, you've got to save up for certain programs or things like that. But yeah, if there's a big enough why something is important, you'll figure out the how.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I love it. So to first-time authors upcoming, I love how you use my little quote. It's about the person you become at the other end of it. What would be your number one tip for someone who's thinking about going on their own journey of writing a book or even, creating their own space?
Again, as you said, first of all, seek help. There's a lot more information out there these days to help people. In fact, around about this time that I wrote about studios, once upon a time, just a short time ago, there wasn't much information. Now, thanks to the internet, there's lots of more information out there. There's, you can do virtual tours through other people's studios. And it's the same with writing books. There's a lot of information and encouragement there, but I think with Nat and Stu and the Ultimate 48-Hour team too, that you've created something that's distilled it into a very, very turn form that helps people, to bring what's inside out and turn it into something, because you're really helping so much more. It's not just writing it, bringing something to the surface for yourself is vitally important. And again, it's that creative thing, bringing it out into the world, but also you don't know, even if it just helps one person or inspires one person, and it's you don't know where that may lead. You don't know where that may lead someone else.
I know, I've had messages where people said I've saved their lives, even from my first book, because it was on weight loss, and they went too far, and how it pulled them back. It's wonderful, like, to think, even though I think my first book was very amateurish, because I actually didn't know Victoria people like me existed.
Yes.
And therefore I just kind of went on my own, made a ton of mistakes, choosing the wrong publisher, what I wrote, how I put stuff in the book, no structure really. I just kind of like verbal diarrhea, like of everything I possibly knew and that was my head, but nevertheless still completed the project, and other people benefited. And just said, I've had messages where they've said, you've saved my life through that, the information. It's like I reference your book all the time if I go off the rails and things like that. I love that. So where can people buy your book?
Well, I've put it onto my website, which is Victoria Kitanov Fine Art.
Yes.
Having said that, I've also got another website that will be coming up related to the hall, which will be victoriahallscone.com.au. But the book at the moment, to save confusion, is on my current website, victoriakitanovfineart.com.au.
Nice one, good. And one of my assistants will pop that link into the live and the different areas where this interview goes out. So, but that's the look of the website, victoriakitanovfineart.com.au, guys. And also Victoria's book is distributed internationally. You'll find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. In case you're watching this, just search for Claim Your Space and probably just put Victoria and it'll probably mess it up. And you know, you can buy it. And of course, there's an ebook version of it as well, if you like reading on a device, which I'm not a big fan of it. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom this morning, and you know, some of the insight around the book writing journey, because I know this wasn't your first book, that you've illustrated books and been involved in so many wonderful things over the years. I wish you all the best for all of it. As I said, keep me also posted on your events, because it's something different that I don't go too much into drawing and painting myself, but I always like to stretch myself outside of you know, my comfort zone to try new things, because I think from that you discover more about yourself. So,
I was just going to say this is an ideal writer's retreat. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
May I just say thank you so much for having me, Nat. It's been a delight, and thank you for allowing me to be part of the journey as well.
I know. Well, you've been a model student, and I can't wait. You know, the second time around, it'll be a lot easier. You'll know a lot more, like what's coming and kind of things like that, and even the third time. But I look forward to us having a very long relationship through writing and releasing more books into the world.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, have a great day, and everyone else have a great week. And as always, smash it out. Bye, guys.